What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host that is struggling very hard to learn to play the piano, Zach, or Captain Zach, whichever one y'all want. Let me know in the comments below. Captain Zach, in case you don't know, is my voicey here, alias, I guess. And over here, I'm just Zach because this is the solo show. But you know what? In case y'all prefer the nostalgic Captain Zach, just let me know. I'll probably change it up if y'all request it enough. Alright, this story's called Teaching Captain a Lesson the Hard Way. Here are our players. There's me, Master Sergeant, who is my supervisor, Captain West Point, who is part of the office staff, Lieutenant Colonel Bossman. When I was enlisted in the U.S. Army, I served as an administrative specialist and vehicle driver for a brigade operations, S3 office. I got the job not through taking a relevant training course, but because a soldier who did take that course and serve in that slot was leaving the Army, and somebody learned I could also type. At the time, the other specialist left. I typed 25 to 30 words per minute, and he typed over 100 words per minute. I got better over time. After doing that job for a little over a year, we got a new staff officer in, Captain West Point. He was absolutely certain he was God's gift to any unit he graced with his presence. At the time of the story, he had already shown his incompetence in several areas and was on every NCO's and enlisted soldier's shortlist of least likely to find his ass with both hands. Captain comes to me one Friday as I'm getting ready to leave. He drops 8 pages of handwritten text, front and back, in my inbox. "I need this for Monday." He turns to leave and I stop him. "Sir, when are you presenting this? It's end of week and I already turned everything off." He turned and stared at me. "I need this for a meeting with Lieutenant Colonel at 8 o'clock on Monday." He turned and left. Well, crap. I guess I'm working extra this weekend, and there's no way I'm gonna have him available to review the draft to catch any possible mistakes or rewordings, so it's all on me. That happened again. Twice more in the next 6 weeks. Walk up at end of day, drop a pile in my basket, say he needs it for the next workday, then walk away. But that third time, my supervisor saw him. As I was turning my word processor back on, dinosaur predecessor to the PC, he approached me. "Does he do that a lot?" I nodded. "Every 2 or 3 weeks. Always end of day, always due next day." "That crap's gonna stop." He walked away and I went back to work. Scroll ahead 3 weeks. It's annual review time. Every unit is rolling up its status reports for the previous year's activities and plans for the next year for presentation up the chain. My boss, Lieutenant Colonel, comes to my desk at 3 p.m. I stop what I'm doing and he hands me 3 pieces of paper. "How long will it take you to type this up for me to present?" I quickly leaf through it, skimming the content. About 2 hours, sir, give or take, with one review and making corrections." He looks me straight in the eye and says, "This is flash traffic, and once you finish it, you are released for the day." Weird, but flash traffic. Yes, sir. He walked away. Just after 4 o'clock, I'm working on the final draft. Captain comes up and drops paper in my inbox. "I need this for tomorrow." He turns to leave and I say, "Sorry, sir, but Lieutenant Colonel has me working on a flash priority. I can't do it." He stares at me again. "Do mine after his then." He turns again. "I can't, sir. Lieutenant Colonel said that when I am done with his flash, I am released for the day." He stared at me for a few seconds, then walked away and knocked on Lieutenant Colonel's door. I sat close enough that I could hear Lieutenant Colonel laying into him for waiting until the last minute to get his report done and refusing to order me to do it for him. When I was done with Lieutenant Colonel's report, the captain was waiting for me outside of Lieutenant Colonel's office door. He asked me to show him how to use the word processor. I set him up with a blank document and walked away. When I walked in the next morning at 7 o'clock, Captain was there. By the look of him, he never left. Quietly frustrated, he had gotten himself stuck in one of the system menus with no idea how to get out. I politely got him out of my chair, backed out of the menus to his document, and took over the work. He had completed maybe a third of what he wanted me to do. I completed the rest before 8 o'clock and handed it to him in time for his meeting. This happened twice more before I left that unit. Lieutenant Colonel comes to me close to end of day. "Flash traffic and leave when you are done." Captain wants to queue work for after that and is refused. It was the second time the flash scenario happened that I figured out that the Lieutenant Colonel, after getting a heads up from monosodium glutamate, Master Sergeant, was trying to teach Captain a lesson. I hope he eventually learned his lesson, but it didn't happen while I was still there. So, in the military, you are a salaried, basically, employee, so you can't get overtime, is that right? I could be wrong, correct me if I am. So I can imagine this type of thing happening a lot in the military because, from what I've heard, there is quite a number of individuals who love flexing that rank of theirs. And if so, let me know. How many times have you, been about to go home, get off work, and then some chump with a higher rank than you comes in and he's like, hey, do this, basically just what happened here. And I'm assuming there's not really an appeal process when it comes to bullcrap orders. Alright, this story's called, How Come You Treat Us Differently Than Most Staff NCOs? While serving in the U.S. Marines, 2014 to 2018, I was stationed in Camp Pendleton as a 3531 Motor T operator, or a truck driver. I unfortunately never deployed due to the retrograde in Afghanistan in 2013. And because my unit, Truck Company HQBT 1st Marine Division, was full of incompetent white knight officers, SNCOs and NCOs who could barely even do their job. Don't get me wrong, I have met phenomenal people and leaders in the Marines, but they are completely pushed aside and replaced by indoctrinated bootlickers who can barely read but are by the book. In my last year, I was lucky enough to get temporary additional duty orders, or TADs, to 1st Marine Division General Staff Level Office for Logistics, also known as G4. Yes, for the last year, I was a paper pusher, which is better than being in the motor pool. As an E4, or corporal, I was one of the few lower enlisted in the office. I was lucky to serve alongside the greatest SNCOs, NCOs, and officers in the 1st Marine Division. All of them were either mechanics or motor transportation operators, so it was a nice gig. Throughout my enlistment, I have felt more as a number until I worked in G4. They treated me like an adult, took care of me, and like a human being. While in G4, there was a staff sergeant that stood out the most. Let's call him Staff Sergeant Rambo, out of respect for his privacy. With almost 20 years in the Marine Corps, was a part of the invasion of Iraq, fought in Fallujah and in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. I was shocked that he was still a staff sergeant and not a gunnery sergeant, a master sergeant, or first sergeant. The dude was one of the most humble, salty Marines I have ever met. Keep in mind, I'm a huge military history guy, and I loved hearing stories about people serving time overseas. Listening to him talk about his time in Iraq and Afghanistan was to me like a kid in a candy shop. One day I was working late at the office, and Rambo finished changing over from his uniform to civilian clothes. We had a locker room next to our office. After changing, he sat down right across from my desk to put on his shoes. While putting on his shoe, both of us started shooting the crap. This was very rare because it was frowned upon in the Marines to talk comfortably as a lower enlisted to higher enlisted and officers. I then asked him the question, Staff Sergeant, why do you treat us differently? What were you like as a corporal? Did you haze anybody? In the Marine Corps, it's a common thing that corporals and sergeants haze their junior Marines, also known as boots. After asking him the question, he just kinda stood there and took a deep sigh. He told me that back in the day, he was a ruthless corporal, always playing screw games with his junior Marines and belittling them. He told me that while in Afghanistan, he was on patrol, and one of his Marines got shot in the face. He then said, the night before he died, we screwed with him so badly. I don't remember exactly what he told me next, but it was along the lines of, imagine, the only things you experience before you die is getting screwed with. He wasn't emotional with his story, but you could see the resentment in his face. I never knew the name of the Marine who was killed or where exactly in Afghanistan he was killed. All I knew was that this was a story that is true. Because of this experience, Rambo changed how he treated Marines. There are many stories I have heard in the Marines, and I would love to share them on here. I now currently left the Marine Corps in 2018. Rambo is about to retire, and I'm currently serving part-time in the California National Guard. Well, first I gotta say thank y'all for your service. That's a sad story. Back when I was really considering the Marines, the recruiter, he told me everything I wanted to hear, obviously, and I was really excited at the prospect of becoming one because one of the things I was really looking forward to was the whole thing about brotherhood. And he told me how someone he was serving with is now the godfather to his children and he's the godfather to their kids. That's the kind of thing I wanted to experience because growing up and even now, I've never really had any super close friends. I've had a couple maybe, but just some friendships, they don't last. And everyone picks on their friends. It just shows how close you are, how comfortable you are, that anything you say isn't necessarily meant to be mean, or anything you do isn't necessarily meant to hurt them, it's just to have fun and mess around, and it honestly helps you get closer. But hazing is just all the bullying without any of the niceness afterwards. All my former and current military peeps, tell me your hazing stories. Were you hazed? Did you haze other people? Alright, this story's called How a Training Instructor Was Shot by a Trainee. And this is a non-US military service story, and he'd also prefer not to identify his country for personal reasons. I'm a firearms range training instructor, or RSO, in my country's army at a basic training center. By the time I even meet a group, they have been through classroom instruction on pretty much everything that can be taught in a classroom. They have basic range safety, to firearm mechanics, to ability to assemble and disassemble their firearms, to stance, etc. They've practiced with rubber replicas or inert guns on every skill that can be practiced with them. We have 42 hours divided among 12 scheduled lessons and 2 surprise lessons to qualify them in M16, Glock 17, and Remington 870. This was something like Lesson 2 with this group. It's not unusual to have a range of competencies from farmers, hunters, sport shooters, well acquainted with firearms, to city kids who are scared of firearms. Some groups are horrible, some are pretty good. Not a single individual in this particular group was below average, and many were relatively high level. We were doing pistols this day. I was on the far east side of the firing line doing some individual training with one of the kids who was a lower level within the group, just working on the draw with him. Suddenly, I hear lots of yelling from the other 2 RSOs, then the company TIs, and the sound of a scuffle. We don't really do a lot of that type of yelling in the military where I'm from. We yell for volume and distance coverage, but very rarely for aggression or intimidation. This was the latter type. Someone really screwed up. I gave the ceasefire command, had everybody freeze, and went to the far west side of the line where this was going down. I don't know what the hell happened, but the other 2 range TIs and the company TIs were on top of this kid, beating the utter crap out of him. We don't touch trainees, much less provide a beatdown unless there's a very strong reason, so I definitely joined. One has him in a rear choke and is doing knuckle strikes to the temples. Another has a knee on his side and is drilling him in the throat. Another has the trainee's knees folded up behind him, is pushing them down and punching in the kidney area. Another has this kid's elbow hyperextended backwards with knee on wrist and is delivering knuckle strikes to the dorsum of his hand, which has the Glock 17 in it. I hop in as well to assist with the ass kicking, albeit having no idea why. Even using strikes to his fingers and broken wrist with a baton didn't get him to let go. Some heavily armed MPs show up. It takes like 6 MPs wrestling this kid, with a 7th dry stunning him repeatedly, and the 8th holding a shotgun to his throat to get the gun away from this kid. We have the company TIs evacuate the range while myself and the other 2 range TIs help with detaining the kid. We were met with an ambulance, the base doctor, nearly the entire MP department, and police officers from the city nearby. At this point, I still had no idea why. He had his elbow broken backwards, his wrist obviously broken, was unconscious, bleeding from the face, convulsing and agonally breathing. Paramedics took him, though the base doctor, an MP, and a city police officer rode with. Still had no idea what actually started this or why it happened. Seemed excessive. Upon debrief and review of the cameras, it turned out that trainee idiot was getting some direct instruction that he didn't appreciate while he was holstered up. So he pushed back off the firing line table, drew the pistol, pointed it in the face of the RSO instructor next to him, pulled the trigger, clicked, racked aside, then pointed it at his company training instructor, bang, and caused a deep graze on his cheek. That's where the beatdown commenced. Holy freaking cow. This guy either had some major balls or some minor brain. Wait, that just sounds kind of inappropriate now. Ew. But you get what I'm saying. That guy, no, he was just stupid. Who the hell? Why? Never point a gun at anything you aren't willing to shoot. But I guess this guy was willing to shoot given that he shot, but just don't do that. Well, anywhere, actually, especially in a freaking military shooting range where you see what happens. You get messed up really bad. Alright, this one's called The Great STD Outbreak of 2011. This occurred in the first week of May 2011. I was a brand newly certified mid-level practitioner in a medical field, acting as the sole Army medical officer on board a naval anti-air destroyer that's among a fleet that had just wrapped up an international war game. We weren't even remotely coastal. We were far out into the blue water of the Pacific. We were having a fleet-wide party, cookout, and swim call celebrating the American successful assassination of Osama bin Laden. The party rock anthem was blaring on big announcement speakers despite the fact we're not an English-speaking nation. We were right in the middle of swim call, the party rock anthem is ending, and echoing simultaneously from all the speakers in the entire fleet is a request for all medical officers in the fleet to report to the top side of the submarine that we rendezvoused with. You usually don't hear that type of announcement unless something serious is happening, and I wasn't the only one who had an adrenaline dump. Medical officers from the various ships in the fleet are stripping naked on the deck, changing into trunks and swimming like lives depended on it, as some other Western pop song, I believe Born This Way, came overhead. Of course, there was no emergency. We were being ushered down into this tight submarine in a rather expeditious manner, though. I'd previously never been in one. It smelled like a side alley auto garage ran by people who made bad dietary choices. We're all crowded into the engine room, a bunch of medical professionals ranging from nurses to 2 physicians, and the submarine's captain comes in. They have an unknown contagious disease ravaging the submarine, they say. He brings a patient in who strips to nudity in front of us. He is covered in a rash from top to toe, but it's very concentrated in his pubic area. Apparently very itchy. Great, exactly what I wanted. Big swim call, super fun day, but I get to investigate an STI. We ended up having a runner swim to the fleet lead, bringing sample collection kits. I was the lucky dude who got to collect biopsies and blood from 35 different people, then swim it back to the cruiser. Swim call was over and the party was wrapping up, of course, as we were investigating. We had some submarines aboard the cruiser to observe. We had diagnosis after 4 days. Literally every single STD there was. We found syphilis, we found herpes, we found crabs, we found scabies, we found hepatitis. It turned out a lot of submariners are really gay. Hey man, what else are you supposed to do down there? Oh, that's nasty. Okay, not the gay part, but everything else. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.